Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Thursday afternoon. Joining us from Detroit, Michigan is Vince Goodwill.
What's up, Wendy?
Home of the Detroit Pistons, who are on pace for 62 and a half wins, just in case you wanted to know that.
That is still insane to consider.
Can you imagine you might be leaving Detroit and that might be where like all the playoffs are going to be, like all year, all spring?
Yeah, a couple players have told me I'm coming back in June.
There you go. I respect it. Joining us from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, where he booted McMahon out, is Anthony Slater.
This is like McMahon's lair. We had to do an NBA Today hit today, and I figured we were doing it on the floor, but he said, you got to come up here. So here I am with an interesting scene behind me.
What a great nickname for something that where McMahon is, a lair. I think that's perfect. Yeah, I see some basketballs bouncing behind you. Who's down there on the floor at this time of day?
I saw Anthony Davis with a motorcycle-looking glove doing a individual workout. It's hard for me to tell exactly how hard or not hard he went, but he's on the court with a basketball, and it's trade deadline season, and he's a name, so it's a curious sight.
Wouldn't it be amazing if he was just with a motorcycle? If he just stopped with a motorcycle? I was like, oh my God, he's got a motorcycle? Vince, do you remember when the Bucks mascot used to drive a motorcycle around the court pregame? It was so loud. Maybe he still does. It was so loud I couldn't stand it.
He might still do that. I know they did that at the Bradley Center. I feel like they were doing it there at the building that they tore down, as opposed to the Fiserv Forum, which was awfully quiet last night. I don't know if you noticed that, Wendy.
I did notice it, and we're going to talk about it a little later. Bango is the mascot for the Bucks, and he once brought me a birthday cake on my birthday, mid-game. I don't know what I was supposed to do. It was a very nice gesture. I don't know what I was supposed to do with the birthday cake mid-game, but it was a very nice gesture. Thank you to Bango back in about 2005. I was younger then. I was in my 20s. All right, Slater, it's been an interesting week and a bad week for the Warriors. Jimmy Butler with the awful injury. Was that Sunday or Monday? Was that Monday?
What's today? Today is Thursday. It would have been Monday night against the Heat.
Wow. Feels like it's been a long time since then. And then they played the following day against the Raptors, and they got blown out by 30. What's the vibe around the team right now?
Deflated. It was a bad time for them to have a back-to-back. Jimmy Butler was in the locker room pregame Tuesday with the torn ACL. The next day, as they're just kind of picking up the pieces of the aftermath. And in a weird way, it's been reminding me of the inverse of last year at this time when they got Jimmy Butler. Prior to getting Jimmy Butler, there was a deflated nature about how they were just kind of spinning their tires. They weren't going anywhere. They were hovering at 500. And then when they got Jimmy, y'all probably remember Steph Curry went on a surge. It was like 50-point games. Probably over the course of a 3-week period, he was averaging 35 on incredible shooting. And they would even talk about, the invigorated passion they were playing with because they saw legitimate contention ahead of them all of a sudden because of Jimmy Butler. That was the All-Star break where Draymond Green proclaimed they were going to win a championship. What I've seen over the last 3 days is like I said, the opposite, with Jimmy Butler stripped from them very suddenly in a very tragic way, right? The way he had to leave the court. You have Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga dragging him to a wheelchair outside of the locker room the other day. It is a realization of what's really no longer obtainable, at least to this core. We'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks as far as trade deadline goes. It seems implausible for them to get some type of roster mix that puts them back in fringe contention. But as of this moment, and you saw it, I thought, the other night against the Raptors, they go down 10-0, they go down 30. Steph and Draymond don't even go in the fourth quarter, even as the bench unit's bringing them to single digits, because it almost just looked like that just wasn't the night for them to play because there was so much more bigger picture that they were kind of absorbing.
Yeah, it sounds like Jimmy was just really devastated by of course, you tear your ACL, you're devastated, but he knows how fragile the situation is there. And of course, Jimmy is vowing to come back and, get back by, early next season, which is not impossible. But anytime next season, I think, would be a win. And from what I understand, he intends to rehab, with the Warriors, with Rick Celebrini, who's very highly respected. I think he, wants to send the message, I want to be here. I'm not even going to go be away during my rehab because, I hate to say this, Vince, but, when this injury like this happens and you got the Steph Curry timeline, you wonder. And I mean, look, Mike Dunleavy got asked. He had a press conference the day after. Mike Dunleavy got asked, in addition to Kuminga's trade demand, he got asked about trading Jimmy. He's like, no. But of course he's going to say no. But the truth is, like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Did you see how he said that, though? Because I asked him. I was like, look, DeAnthony Melton tore his ACL last year. You then very quickly, first day he was eligible, traded DeAnthony Melton's contract for Dennis Schroeder, you then reflipped for Butler to make sure you didn't have just this empty money on your books at this urgent time for them. Would you do that with Butler? And he was like, oh, well, I hadn't really thought about it, but now that you bring it up, and I use the word, could you envision? He's like, he said it back. Like, I don't envision that, but I do think that's at least.
Well, there's no way it's the first time he thought about it, but
for sure.
It's not very couth to say when the guy's laying there in the back, still recovering from the initial tear, I'd be like, yeah, we could trade him.
By the way, Mike Dunleavy's former teammate, who Mike is close with, who was the driving force of the Jimmy Butler trade when there were, aspects, parts of the organization that were apprehensive about Butler. Like, he's the one that really pushed for the Butler trade. So I think that's like within, I don't know, the context of all of this.
And former teammates when Jimmy Butler became Jimmy Butler too. Like, that's another part of it where he respects the stature. He respects the career that Jimmy has built. I was in Chicago when Butler was most improved, won the got to the All-Star game, all that. And Dunleavy was there. And Dunleavy was, Wendy, you might remember this, he was supposed to be like this final piece, having been hurt for most of that season. Like, when Dunleavy comes back, we're all gonna, it's all gonna fit together. Jimmy Butler was one of those people saying that. So there is a lot of respect amongst the two of those people, but we see where they are. Like, the surge that they've been on up until Jimmy got hurt. Eighth, you're still in the throes of the play-in. The Phoenix Suns still have a better record than you. So even if you get this Kuminga thing situated where you wind up flipping them for something, even if Jimmy's part of it, let's just assume that he's not. But even if he is, it only brings you back to where you were before, which is 5 games over 500. That's not tenable for where this looks like this team can go this season. I mean, maybe I'm thinking too big picture here, y'all. But are we quietly, like very, very quietly, like we've been paying attention to Giannis, I know we're going to get there, and a bunch of other things that have been big picture NBA-wise. Are we watching, like, not just the slow death of the Warriors dynasty and all that stuff, but it's going to come to a crashing halt this offseason? Like, where they're going to have to make some real life decisions about, or go to Steph Curry and say, hey, how do you want to spend your final year? Steve Kerr is not with a contract for next year. Like, there's a lot of questions that go beyond this. Maybe this Jimmy Butler thing just hastens that process.
I mean, I think it's already been bleeding to a halt. Like, this, to me, the dynasty died the day, the Raptor, the 2 days where Durant tears the Achilles and Clay tears the knee. Of course, they did win a title later. It's like kind of like the crowning.
Yeah, I mean, that 2022 title is one of the most important moments of their whole run.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For sure, but it's just, the slow death of the Klay Thompson, the story of like how it split with Klay Thompson and then his departure.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you're there every day, but I would say when Klay left, that was like, when they're like, listen, we can't afford everybody anymore.
After Bob Myers, by the way, he was a monster figure in the dynasty and he openly, departed. So we're just seeing like kind of like the fading days of like maybe, compare it to a TV show that had 25 seasons and, we're in the final chapters of it. And I do think it's at least profiling to split off piece by piece by piece. And that was Bob, that was Andre Iguodala, that was Klay. Steve is a possibility. We'll see how the next several months look. Steph would seem to be the final one, but I think Steph Curry's going to end his career with the Warriors. He's only said he always wants to, and we'll see what.
Yeah, I can't see that. But look, Vince, what I will say is like when people envision like because the Warriors have all of their picks and swaps going forward, unlike a lot of other teams. And like, look, let's just be honest. Slater mentioned this on NBA Today. If you're going to be attracted to picks, it's like I'll look at some Golden State Warrior picks after Steph Curry is retired. Those potentially have value. Like when you've got that and you've got, Kuminga's still there. And the one thing is like people were saying, well, it's going to be hard for the Warriors to trade for a big piece contract wise without them doing something like putting Draymond in, and like they're, putting Draymond in, it just doesn't seem like they would ever do that. And now they've got the Butler contract. And I know that it's just not something anybody wants to talk about, but they've got the Butler contract and they've got all their picks. So it's possible they got something in there that they could do. What that would be, we got to wait and see.
I think everybody's in wait and see mode, right? Like we've been talking about this whole, everybody keeping their powder dry because of what, Giannis wants to do or potentially and how all those dominoes fit. And Golden State is just another one of those teams. I think, and Slater has kind of alluded to this and everybody's kind of danced around it a little bit. They just have to have honest conversations with themselves and say, even as great as Steph still is there a single player out there that completely changes your trajectory where you can squeeze another championship out when all of the teams at the top of the West are young with fresh legs and ain't afraid of no Steph Curry? And I'm not saying that as a disrespect, but this league moves so fast. And you go from where things were to where things are, where Oklahoma City and San Antonio and possibly Houston or Minnesota, who I think is kind of a sleeping giant in this. Like, I just don't know if there's this one move that's out there. Even if you put Jimmy and Kuminga together and you can go and get a superstar in another player, does that put you in a position where you're more than a second round team? I'm not even sure that's the case.
They've been pretty honest that that's okay. Second round team is okay. Threat. What they did last year, they beat the Rockets, which was kind of, I don't know if you consider it an upset, but they were a 7 seed out of the play-in that took down the Rockets that they felt were going to give the Timberwolves a real threat in the second round before the hamstring injury to Steph Curry. Steve Kerr calls it meaningful basketball, whatever. I think they're fine making a trade that doesn't put them in the Oklahoma City tier, but just puts them in, as you mentioned, you're a Final 8 team. Maybe you can be a Final 4 type team. Steph Curry's playing important May basketball on ABC, and we get those afternoon games, and he still gets a few playoff moments because that's really what he wants. And I think they can operate that way and even talk so honestly because their legacies are cemented. They don't need to win a title.
Yeah, I know. For some people, would say, "Wait a minute, you're not trying to win the championship? Like you don't like that's like some sort of sin." No, they're just trying to feel the juice. Like I respect that. I respect it.
But it's also why they're not just going to blast out all their post-step picks for, Trey Murphy, for example, a guy they are interested in.
I guess it just depends on who's available.
It certainly does.
Speaking of, I have no idea what's going to happen between now and when this podcast posts. Maybe nothing. But Vince, this is your neck of the woods up there in the Central Division. The situation in Milwaukee, it's not getting better. And I'm not going to sit here and say that after 12 years, something that happens in a, individual game, like, the fans being annoyed and booing Giannis is going to make a difference, or Giannis saying, that his teammates aren't, they were too young or whatever. I'm not paying attention to small stuff like that. But the direction of this Bucks team is not good. I don't see a way where that direction is going to materially change. I mean, they're playing poorly right now. I assume that they will play better. And especially if Giannis doesn't get traded and that's no longer at all on their minds, that I do think they would play better after the trade deadline. But this team is not going anywhere this year. And I don't think it's going anywhere materially important next year. And so when is somebody going to say enough is enough, whether that's Giannis or whether that's the Bucks team?
Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Like, this is what it is. Like, neither one of us wants to be the person to say goodbye. I think that was a Gladys Knight song back in the day. That might be actually a little bit before my time. But I think that's what this is Giannis doesn't want to say, get me out of here. He doesn't want to look like the guy that 5 years from now, when he comes back and he has a jersey retirement and he has a statue, or maybe more than 5 years. He's got plenty of time left. He doesn't want to be the one to leave on bad terms or to feel like he is abandoning the franchise. Subsequently, every time that Giannis has been at an inflection point with the Bucks, John Horst has done something. Well, Drew Holiday, going to get him, or Eric Bledsoe. And then you trade a bunch of picks in the midst of that. And then you trade for Damian Lillard, and we thought that had a lot of runway as far as a two-man duel. It just didn't happen. Sometimes, guys, it's just what it is. Like, we are, and maybe this is sort of the curse of LeBron, in the way that we all feel like the superstars are entitled to play championship basketball with their franchise every single season. And sooner or later, the bill comes due on those micro moves that you are putting up to trade the aging players, to bring in maybe another aging player, but a higher ceiling. And then the bottom falls out on you. Like, Milwaukee actually has good pieces, like the Ryan Rollinses, the KPJs, like certain guys like that you can see being good pieces on a championship level team. Just this does not look like a championship playoff contending second round, even given the first round a scare team right now.
This doesn't look like a 7 seed in the East.
No.
This doesn't look like a top 19
they're,
team in
they're right now
basketball.
they're 11th and look like a 13 right now. Now they may end up being an 8, and maybe they're a frisky 8 because they got an MVP level player. But come on, guys. I mean, you're not looking at this team saying they can win 2 playoff play-in games, 4 games against a 1 or 2 seed, and then keep going. Like, that's not reality. It's just not reality.
Is it the 2031 pick, their own 2031 they have? Is that right?
I think it's 2031 or 2032. They can trade one, not both.
So again, like, we talked earlier about potentially the post-Steph Curry picks and their value. I mean, that is a very valuable, particularly if unprotected, pick on the market.
Which is why they can't really trade it unless they're getting a guy that they think can put them into the conference finals. And who is that player?
Yeah, but Vinny kind of said it there, but they've been operating in a very desperate, some would call it delusional way, right? With the whole wave and stretch of Lillard, the Miles Turner stuff this offseason. Isn't that the question before the deadline? Which road do you take? If you are going to stay on this, save Giannis type thing, you could improve your team. I'm not saying improve it to a level that is realistic. You're in fringe contention, but Zach LaVine, name your, I don't know, like high priced guy who could come in and jolt you a little bit.
I think they can only do more damage to their future.
But are we sure they're not going to go down that road?
I'm not sure.
Again?
Nope, I'm not. Because I think...
Here's the question I have for you, Wendy. I mean to cut you, but here's the question I have for you just generally. What is Giannis going for nowadays? Like, when we think about the player packages and the deals and everything else, I don't think Giannis is going to go for 3 first-round picks and swaps and matching salaries and it's maybe for the Bucks to some degree. They're looking at what they can't get for Giannis in today's market and saying the best course of action is let's roll the dice because it's going to hurt one way or the other, and we'd rather it hurt later than have it hurt now because the market in today's NBA economy doesn't call for Giannis to, a return on Giannis to get what we think he's going to get.
Okay, so that comes out a couple of things. Number one, I just want to point something out about the Bucks pick. And I'm guilty of sort of tossing this aside for much of the year, but I'm not going to do it anymore. The Bucks owe a swap this year to the Pelicans. It actually is going to get rerouted to the Hawks. But the team that they're going to swap with is New Orleans. New Orleans, as you know, is not good. That pick may not swap. And if it does swap, it's going to be hold on. If the Bucks decide to move on from Giannis and go into a tank, and they can get their pick, I mean, they're already in 11th place. I mean, I don't even know where their pick is right now. But, if you guys, I think they're 3-11 when Giannis doesn't play this year. So it's not like, they're going to, it's that difficult. So their pick right now is 9th. Okay. And they are 5 games out of 5th. Okay. So, and New Orleans pick right now, they got the tied for the worst record with Indiana. So it's very possible that if they trade Giannis and shut it down, that they could really be assured of a pick in the top 6, 7. Either it's theirs or it's swapped. Like, let's say they get lucky and hop up into like 3rd or 4th and they swap it out. But, they can get a top pick in this draft with their pick. That's still on the table. That's one thing to consider. Second thing to consider is because this draft is so good, and maybe this is a reason you'd want to wait till the offseason. One, you'd want to let the string play totally out to the last fiber. And you could see what the lottery looks like. And you could see like maybe where, a team might end up like, Atlanta might end up with that New Orleans pick. Not that I think Atlanta's beating down the door for Giannis, but like you could see where Brooklyn ends up, right? You could see where Dallas ends up. Like what happens if Dallas completes their shutdown and they end up, I don't think that Dallas would do that, but like, you could sort of see those things, but you could try to make a trade with one of those teams and you could end up with 2 top 10 picks. Or because you're going to tank and you feel like you're going to get a high pick anyway, then when you potentially look to see what the Giannis market is, that getting a high draft pick may not be the number one priority, and getting players and future picks may be the number one priority. And that brings in more teams. The big question would be, obviously one, is Giannis going to actually ask for a trade, or is he going to stick with what he said and he's not? Is Milwaukee going to move off their position where they're not going to do anything, or are they going to examine it? And if they do get to that spot, if they do get to where most other teams feel like they're going to get to, is it going to be open to trade anywhere? Or are they going to have to go to Giannis and go side by side? I would think they would go to Giannis and go side by side. The prickly thing with that is Giannis doesn't want to be, known as the guy who said, I want to go to a certain place, because that would be away from Milwaukee. So there's this tight pathway. Giannis wants the Luka treatment I shouldn't say Giannis wants this. Let me take that back.
Traded overnight.
It would be amazing for the modern superstar. What you would like to have is the Luka love from Dallas. Okay. Where every fan in the market still thinks you're the greatest thing in the world. They're wearing your jersey. They're cheering for you when you come back. They love you. But they don't want the Luka where they don't have any idea they're getting traded. Now, Luka ended up in a place that's a pretty good place, and he was ready to sign a contract extension.
How about this? The difference between when Kevin Durant goes to Oklahoma City and when Russell Westbrook goes to Oklahoma City is what you're saying.
Right, but the Russell Westbrook thing was greased because Paul George wanted out first.
But let's be honest here. The Milwaukee Bucks fans, let's say Giannis does say, you know what, at this point I want out. Who would actually blame him? Like, what reasonable fan, and maybe reasonable fan is an oxymoron, right?
That's because you get the drip, drip, drip that's happened, right?
Yes.
If he had done that a year ago, it would have been different.
Maybe he should have and someone told me this a couple days ago, maybe Giannis should have just pushed a lot harder over the summer to go to the Knicks.
Well, I think Giannis should have done it last summer, because I don't think this Bucks team was going anywhere. And I think the Bucks did more damage to themselves by doing the wave and stretch and Miles Turner. And I think it would have been better for everybody if it happened last summer. That said, I have said on this podcast for a couple of years that I respect that an organization that didn't go to the finals for 40 years after Kareem asked to be traded wants to play it out to every fiber, the string out to every fiber, and that they're just trying to be, incredibly respectful and understanding of the talent that they have. And so I get it. But in a vacuum, I think last summer would have made more sense for everybody.
I respect teams that go for it. I will say that, Wendy. I respect teams, not, you know what I mean?
Doc's been around too long. What does Doc want to rebuild? Doc went in and said, I believe we could win with this team.
So they're going to shoot themselves in the foot again at this deadline and throw a pick that could be a top 5 come 2031 to go get like I said earlier.
I would absolutely not do that. I would absolutely not do that.
That they shouldn't, but might they?
They might.
And Wendy, you would know this better. Isn't all the current signals right now that is still their buyers, not sellers, is essentially the way to put it?
Last week, I was like, they're only making, by the way, I said this yesterday on TV and people totally misinterpreted this. When I say a team's making an outgoing calls, it means they're calling, trying to get players. Incoming calls is when people want your players. Obviously, you can make an outgoing call to offer your players, but generally the term, I said last night that the Bucks have only been making outgoing calls, and people were like, oh, they're offering Giannis? I'm like, no, you numbskulls.
All the signals,
everybody's the aggregation, everyone's drool is coming down, and like they can't get to their keyboard fast enough. But
that's another.
You should rename this pod "Don't Aggregate Me."
Well, there's already a pod
like
that's
the
called
one
Don't
thing
Aggregate.
that you absolutely hate is I don't know if there's another pet peeve, Brian, that you have when you preface something by saying, I don't want to get aggregated here. And that's exactly what winds up happening anyway. And maybe there's another pod by the name of Don't Aggregate Me, but I feel like that would be a more appropriate name.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with aggregation because we aggregate stuff at ESPN all the time. I have a problem with reckless aggregation, such as the Bucks are making only outgoing phone calls. They're not taking incoming calls, which is, that they're not looking to trade Giannis. They're trying to acquire players. They're buyers, not sellers. And then it shows up on social media as report, Bucks looking to trade, Giannis. Or somebody could just use what I just said, that is reckless aggregation. And that is what is damaging, but that's neither here nor there. But to get to your point, Vince, you talk to people. I have not heard that the Bucks are backing down from wanting to be buyers. I don't have it up to date to this very second, and maybe it changed in the last 3 hours, and I'll find out tomorrow. But I have not heard the Bucks have changed course.
I haven't either. The crazy thing for me is every time they go on like a 2 or 3 game skid, I'll get variations of the same text and phone call saying, almost like they're circling. Almost like the vultures are circling around that franchise, waiting.
Yeah, they want to speak
not
into
even
existence.
just for Giannis. Yeah, just kind of watch what's going on in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Like they lost 2 in a row now. And I never think it's that fragile, but the league thinks it's that fragile. You know what I mean, Wendy? Like there's something to it. I don't think that John Horst is operating in some, bizarro world or whatever, but the league seems to believe, by and large, not everybody, but a lot of people that I talk to seem to think that every 3-game losing streak, we're just that much closer to the complete blow up. And maybe things sooner or later something's going to happen.
I agree that is, ridiculous when that happens and you say that, whatever. But then you say, okay, but let me see how many games they've played. They've played 40. What has the Bucks played? The Bucks have played 45 games now, 43 games, and they're 18-25. On one hand, a 3-game losing streak doesn't define anything. But on the other hand, more than half the season, when you're 7 games under 500 and you're a game and a half out of the last play-in spot, that's, that you're 3-11 when Giannis doesn't play. That's what defines where your team is. So, all right. Well, Vinny and Slater, thank you so much for taking time out. We're a little shorter with these guys today because we have a special guest coming up. I recorded this a couple days ago with Joakim Noah, who is very much looking forward to Derrick Rose. How about Derrick Rose is getting his number retired on Saturday, Vinny?
That is pretty damn cool, to be perfectly honest with you, to having watched Derrick Rose, even the tail end of Derrick Rose. Wendy, were you in the building when he had the biggest pop I've ever heard in an arena, when he banked that 3 off the glass against the Cavs in 2015 on a Friday night?
Yes, and they raised him up on their shoulders and his face didn't change expression.
He didn't. That was that was also the most positive emotion I've ever seen from Tom Thibodeau, ever. And he damn near ran over a fan pumping his fist because even he didn't believe that went in. Right. So Joe is he's very kind of sort of emotional about talking about Derrick and that team, which you'll talk about right after this.
He's attending it, right?
Oh my God, the whole team is. Well, I don't want to take away from what he said, but yes, the whole Bulls era team is expected to be there. So
he deserved that MVP.
Derrick Rose did? Of course he deserved that MVP.
We relitigated that MVP for some reason, and I don't see why.
Well, there are some MVPs that LeBron didn't win that you could make a case that he should have won. I don't think that's one of them.
That's not the one.
That team won 61 games, I think, and Derrick Rose, I'm not off the top of my head. I don't have a research to this second, but I think he won them 7 or 8 games, with incredible play down the stretch. He was materially the reason they got the number 1 seed with his fourth quarter play. And LeBron's numbers dipped that year. His numbers were still awesome, but his numbers went down. So LeBron has some cases for some years where he didn't win the MVP. I just don't think that's one is the strongest. But was in the prime of his prime. He won 4 out of 5, and that was the one he didn't. So, I can see why. And of course, they beat him 4-1 in the playoffs, which Joe talks about. Coming up right now. All right, now joined from Miami, although you're an international man of mystery because you're all over the world. Joakim Noah. What's up, Joakim?
How you doing, Brian? Everything all right?
Yeah, man. The last time I saw you was in Serbia a couple weeks ago.
Good.
And I learned that you pretty much stayed overseas for like a month, and you went to Cameroon, where your father is from, and where you've invested in youth basketball. So you're a man of the world, and so I'm not surprised that you're doing stuff like that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that, Brian. Feels good to be home. I'm not gonna lie, though.
Yeah, that's right. You're not. You were saying earlier, it's nice to have Uber Eats. Although we had some good food in Serbia now. We ended up going to lunch and hanging out with Sasha Pavlovic. And I feel like Sasha Pavlovic, former Cav, he played in the NBA the same time you did. And I think I sort of got the Serbian spirit. Like, we were sitting there at lunch with Sasha, and he goes, I'm on a 72-hour fast, which was like a religious thing he was doing. But he's like, oh yeah, I'll have rakia. Rakia, bring that, but 72-hour fast. So you've been around the world, and you're doing this new show, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that was my first visit to Belgrade. What did you take away from your experience there? We sort of were there at the same time.
Yeah, that was a really special trip, and obviously we started a show about 6 months ago. This was our 4th episode, and we knew that the basketball culture over there was something different and something unique. Never been. I had Serbian teammates, and, I just wanted to check it out for myself. Got to see an unbelievable game, Red Star against Partizan, and got to meet a lot of old teammates, former teammates, and just get a feel for the spirit of that place. And I couldn't have been more impressed, more inspired, and it all makes sense.
Yeah, so this show, you really want to immerse yourself in these places for a short period of time. And it's about basketball, but it's also about culture. Some of the places you've also gone, you've been to Jamaica, you've been to Morocco, Serbia. Those are all very different places. By the way, when I saw you in Jamaica swimming in the water, I was like, if you said to me that Joakim Noah is doing an Anthony Bourdain style show about basketball and culture, and I could just see you in Jamaica swimming in the water, like I was like, this is exactly what I would think it would look like. But you were totally immersed in, like, you were seeing different sites in Belgrade, looking around. I'm looking forward to seeing the episode when it comes out, because I experienced that a little bit too. And this is an interesting career move for you, because it makes total sense that you would do this. When you approach these situations, like when you approach Belgrade, like what are you looking to get out of it? What are you looking to share with the people who are watching?
So we were just over there, just looking driving around Belgrade, and, it was, there were basketball courts everywhere. So we would stop and, play some 2-on-2 with some kids and ask them some questions. And we're just like walking through the city, and I'm just hearing like I could hear a practice going on, and we just walked in super organically. It wasn't planned. And it was just unbelievable to see these 10-year-olds practicing. The level of coaching, the coach stopping the practice every 2 seconds. I told you not to run to the corner, run through the middle, and then you go to the corner. How many times do I have to tell you? And just the way the kids listen to instruction, it was a breath of fresh air. It was beautiful to watch. Just the tutelage.
I'm sure the coaches knew who you were, but I've been with you in France at games. Obviously, you're major. Everybody knows you there. And a lot of people in Serbia, there's big basketball fans knew you. But I assume the 10-year-olds probably didn't know. Did they not even know who you were?
No, I honestly, no, they don't. They never really saw me play, but
Right.
as soon as I say, look, I played in the NBA for 13 years, I have an experience. I played against some of the best players in the world, and I played for the Chicago Bulls. Now I have their interest, and we can
Yeah.
have. It's kind of. I actually like it better when they don't know because I'm able to have.
Right.
We're able to have deeper conversations. It's not fandom. It's just more they're more interested in because they all have the same dream. Um, wherever you go around the world, the dream for these kids are the same. It doesn't matter if you're in Morocco or Jamaica or Serbia, you say NBA, every kid has the dream of getting there. So it's just my way of being able to go in there and being able to talk to the next generation.
Yes. By the way, like, were you speaking English to these kids and they were picking it up, or was there translation?
The coach, a lot of people spoke English over there. I was actually
That's what I
pretty
was going to
impressed.
say. I
Yeah,
had no problem at all.
no
Like,
problem. Even the kids speak English. Um, so not all of them. So the coach was translating a little bit, but it was just a very organic moment. It wasn't planned. It wasn't on the schedule. I ended up just walking into a gym and spending an hour with these kids. And look, I'm sure they got an experience out of it, but I definitely got a hell of an experience out of it. And, obviously that basketball development is so interesting. And their development over there is some of the best in the world. And it was just very interesting to walk into a place as grassroots as they come and see how they teach 10-year-old kids basketball. And it was very different than what we see at home.
yeah. And so these are the types of experiences you're looking for on this show, Nomad. And, of the episodes that you've done so far, like Serbia was definitely one of my most amazing experiences, but what are some of the things that you've done that you think are going to be memorable for you? That have been in these experiences. Because I know you did one in Chicago also with Derrick Rose. You went back to did one in Chicago where you played for whatever it was, 8 or 9 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. They're all very unique, all very different, but all learning experiences. I really enjoy, obviously, like, Derrick is one of my best friends. That was probably the easier one to do just because of my comfort level, just having played with Derrick for so long and so much to say. We spoke a lot about fatherhood on that episode.
Yeah, he said he looked at your relationship with your father. He said he never told you this, unless I'm remembering it correctly. But he looked at your relationship with your father, Yannick, as an example of how he wanted to parent his kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's our relationship is unique mostly because when he got hurt, we got to spend a lot of time together, and I think this was a very lonely time for him. A lot of questions. So to be able to, we really bonded during that time when he got hurt. He had a very, very different story. You're coming from Chicago. You come from Chicago. You're the number one pick. You're one of the most exciting players to watch. And all of a sudden, all that is taken away from you with an injury. And, basketball is how we were raised. It's really all we know at that point of our lives. And it's now you have to sit back and wait a year. I don't think people realize how hard that moment must have been for him. So to be able to be there with him, talk about fatherhood, talk about, I introduced him to Bob Marley during that time, and we were just, it was very different. It was just like something that I think was very, our relationship really grew during that time. And one of the most humble superstars that I've ever been around, and just so excited for him. Obviously, we have the jersey retirement coming up.
Right. Yeah. Well, so he got honored by the Bulls last year, and that was a special moment. And then they're going to retire his jersey here coming up. And from what I understand, this is going to be kind of, it's for him, number one's going up alongside Jordan and Pippen and all that stuff. And that's amazing. But it's also sort of a celebration of those years where you had some great teams, you and Derrick and Luol Deng and Taj Gibson and what other Bulls am I forgetting in that era?
Kirky Worky.
Kirk
Don't
Heinrich.
forget Kirky Worky. We got the Duck, Brad Miller. And the list, Drew Good, and we had a great group. And Brian, I'll say this. Look, I was around. I won championships in college. This was a really tight group, and chemistry is always something that people don't talk about enough. It's always about stats and how you getting paid. But this was a really tight group, and so Derrick going up there it's not just him. It's our team, and we didn't win a championship. But so this is our championship, like our brother, our leader, our humble leader, our humble superstar is going up next to Michael and Scotty. I think it's something that we're all very proud of, and nobody deserves it more. And the story is so powerful because of all the ups and downs. I think that, through the adversity, we still kept our brotherhood, and that's something I couldn't be more proud of.
I was on the sideline for so many of those games. When I was a kid, I grew up outside Cleveland, and the Cavs had great teams. Mark Price, the guys that are on their rafters, Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance. And year after year, they would have like these mid 50, high 50 win teams. And, they would be the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. And they would run up against the guy in Chicago, 23. And they couldn't get past him. He's one of the greatest athletes of all time, greatest basketball player, whatever. They just couldn't get past him. They had great teams, and they entertained and bonded with an entire generation of Cleveland fans. Brad Daugherty is on the broadcast now. Price was on the broadcast. Larry Nance's son plays for the team. Larry Nance Jr. came back to play for the Cavs because of his connection, from his father. He was so bonded to the area. He lives there in the off season, but they kept running to 23. And so I can appreciate the situation's inversed, Joe, because you guys had these great teams in Chicago.
Yeah. That's right.
Built from, most of you guys drafted. A few of the guys, you, Derrick, Luol, Heinrich, Taj, all drafted. A couple of guys came in as free agents or whatever, but basically homegrown, like those Cavs teams were. And you ran into LeBron. You ran into him when he was in Cleveland. You ran into him when he was in Miami, and you fought admirably and with honor, and you just ran into one of the all-time greats. And so, just because, I have a relationship with Brad Daugherty, I have a relationship, I got to know Mark Price a little bit. I got to know the Nance family. Like, they are very proud of that time, but they couldn't ever quit the banner because they ran into Jordan. So you can relate to this in the exact inverse, because you guys had a pride about yourself, and you went up against LeBron with vigor, with pride, and tried to beat him, and you just couldn't beat one of the best players of all time.
That's 100%. That's exactly what it is. And it took a while to come to grips with that. Every year it was like we really felt like we had a chance, and but it's I can look back on those times and say, like, wow, just the blessing of being able to go up against one of the greats. And, just every single day, weight room, training, just thinking about, circling the games on the calendar of when we were going to pick Cleveland, when we were going to play LeBron, and I think that's the ultimate sign of respect, is just understanding the magnitude of the game and understanding that, to get to where we wanted to get to, ultimately, we had to beat that guy. And unfortunately, it never happened. But, it's just coming to peace with the journey and just seeing how well he's still playing at 41 years old and just like looking back on those moments and being able to cherish the competition at the highest level, and look, I feel like we did our best. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Adversity, injuries. But I look back at those times and, I know in my life, I will never get the feeling of, going to the United Center and playing against LeBron James. Like it was electrifying.
And look, here's the thing, regardless of whether he would ever say, I mean, I'm sure he would say this, he would have taken you on his team in 1/10 of a second. Like for all the Hollywood is hell, which I loved. And, like when you would clap in his face and you would, you would yell at him from the bench. Like I loved all that because nobody would step to him like that. And the one season, his first year in Miami, I think you guys went 3-0 against him. That was the 60-win year. That was Derrick's MVP year. And then you guys go 3-0 against him. And then you win game 1 of the playoff series, conference finals. And then that series is just skin tight. It goes down as 4-1, but one of the games that Miami went to overtime, and then game 5 in Chicago, the Heat hit a whole bunch of threes. You guys were ahead. The Heat had this hot shooting streak, and you guys lost by 3. And then the next year, you guys are awesome again. I think the number 1 seed again, and Derrick gets hurt the first game of the playoff. And so while I can say like you will be remembered as being one of the greatest college teams ever. Like you've got those 2 championships. You'll be remembered as this great Florida Gator, and you'll remember it as this great Bull. And you go around the world. I've seen you in different places in the world, and you're remembered, and you have that. But also, I know that you've got to be like, what if Derrick didn't come down on his leg like that? What if, they shot 45% instead of 55% on threes in game 5? Like I can appreciate that.
Thank you, Brian. It's interesting to see, like, the narrative, people forget the storylines quick. It's all about, did you win or did you lose, especially as the time goes on. So, like I said, look, you lose in a playoff series of that magnitude, especially when it's that close. You don't sleep for weeks, especially, I wore my emotions on my sleeve. It was as tough as you can imagine to lose those series. And yeah, there is some what ifs, but, what if Derrick didn't get hurt? And, people come up to me all the time with that. And you know what? To see our guys be at peace and to see Derrick be at peace with his journey, that to me is something that I'm more proud of than anything. I see there's a lot of championship teams out there that they don't even like each other. They don't
accurate.
And they don't protect the work that they put in, and they don't protect the brand at all costs. And I think that we have this thing where, yeah, it wasn't perfect. There were issues, but we protect those times because we cherish those times, even though we didn't win and there is some what ifs. There has to be gratitude in living out our dreams. And we were kids, we had dreams of playing at the highest level, and we all did that. And we did it with a group that we actually enjoyed each other. We just, I have stories for days with those guys. It's a real brotherhood.
It is so true because, look, I know that ring culture, like I know rings are so important and ring culture is, it is what it is, but like you guys entertained a generation of Bulls fans. And, I think your partner, Matt, was telling me when you went to Abu Dhabi last year, you ran into a Bulls fan and who lived overseas, and he's not an American basically. So I don't remember where he was from. And he said he had 2 kids. One kid he named Rose, his daughter he named Rose, and his son he named Noah. And because for those years, like if you were a Bulls fan, regardless of where your team exited, you were for months on end totally engaged in that team and the way you guys played, and the way Tibbs coached you guys, it was a classic example of the head coach and the mentality. Although I'm sure, famously you guys wore each other out, but the mentality all work together. Like it doesn't go to zero because you guys lose a playoff series. What about all of those years and months, whatever? So that's sort of exactly my philosophy.
I appreciate that. And even Tibbs, even what you were saying, it was like, even what you were saying about Tibbs, like, look, when it ended, it wasn't pretty, but the fact that, Tibbs will be there at Derrick's retirement celebration, and that, in families, there's issues, but, you reconcile and everything's going to be like, we're going to cherish this moment because it's not just Derrick going up there. It's for all of us. And it's something that I couldn't be more proud of. Like, I can't wait to see all those guys and be able to talk about, those times. So it's not, obviously there is some what ifs, but, it's not who we are. We walk in gratitude and we cherish those moments.
So while we were sitting in Belgrade having lunch with Sasha Pavlovic, which I look forward to, I don't know how much of that interview you'll use in the show because, you keep these shows relatively tight. It's one of the things that's good about them. There's a lot of stuff going on in these episodes. They're like 15, 20 minutes or whatever. But Sasha, is a guy that I knew as a Cav, and you were talking to him about the Serbian mentality and how, in the Serbian mentality sometimes is knowing you're going to lose and butting your head into the wall, even knowing you're going to lose. That was some of the stuff you're talking about. And so I was just fascinated watching you learn about the Serbian mentality. And you said to me, you're like, hey man, I think I'm going to go to Cleveland and do a Nomad show from Cleveland. And so I sat back in my seat because at one hand I was like, wow, you're going to do this. And on the other hand, I was like, of course you are. This is the point of the show. And I said, okay, if you do it, you have to go in the winter. You can't go in July. You have to see Cleveland when it's raw. Not that you don't know what it's like to be in the winter. From New York City, played in Chicago, but and you're like, so you're planning on doing it. So you are going to, you're going to do this thing with Derrick, but you are planning to go shoot an episode in Cleveland coming up. And in case people don't remember, I know that many of them will, but you obviously had those comments in the playoffs in 2010. And the time and place of that, Joakim, is like Cleveland is petrified correctly that LeBron's about to walk. And, he's going to walk for New York. He's going to walk for Los Angeles. He's going to walk for Chicago. He ends up walking for Miami. So Cleveland is self-loathing on an average day. They are petrified that their favorite son is walking to a bigger market, a more glamorous market. And you are in the middle of a battle and you basically say, you say Cleveland isn't a place to go on vacation, which is accurate. People don't go on vacation to Cleveland. And so one of the reasons why everybody got their back up and naturally because it's a playoff series and the other team is hated for those 2 weeks or whatever, is because Cleveland was so scared. Now I don't know if that'll translate 15 years later, but part of it was the time and place. But I think it's amazing that you're planning on doing this.
I appreciate that. It's just, I think it's time. It's, people, I was walking in the airport the other day and I'm sitting down. I got my music. I'm waiting for my flight and somebody knocks me on the shoulder and like, hey man, I'm from Cleveland. and he had a lot to say. And he had a lot to say. And, he was talking with like a lot of passion and, it's what you said about Cleveland. I was like, dude, it was 20 years ago. Like, at some point you just gotta let it go. And the truth is I don't know that much about Cleveland. All I know is the battles. And when I said it, you could tell we had lost the game. I was bitter.
That's right.
We had to go back and play a game 2 in that building, which was nuts. But people really gravitated. I mean, I went to a party at All-Star. They stopped the music. The DJ's like, hey man, I'm from Cleveland, man. And so it's definitely something that stuck to people in a lot of ways, but I don't think people also understood the context. For me, it was just like, you're playing against LeBron James and you know what, it was a time for us to just like kind kind of take a stab at him, like, yo, we're not scared and we're ready to, we're just going to keep battling. And it's like, you know, it's your city against my city. And this is how we're going to do it. But it still resonates with people 20 years later. And, you know, right now, like I said, it's all about reconciliation and being able to learn about different places. And I made those comments not knowing anything about Cleveland except for the basketball arena, to be honest. So I think Cleveland's in a really good place. They got a really good team. I love Coach Atkinson. You know, Mobley's a hell of a player. So I love watching Cleveland play. So hopefully we can go to a game and explore a little bit, and maybe I'll have some different feelings about the city.
I think it's going to be tremendous because, number one, I know how these shows are. I saw how you were operating in Serbia, and I actually think people are going to really embrace it. And here's the thing, like, while everybody in Cleveland's got their backup, like, when you come there, and like, I'm not saying it'll be 100% for everybody, but they're going to, I think people are going to appreciate it, you know, especially since I don't know when you're going in January, February, but, you know, like, that's when you should see it. And so, I think it's awesome that you're doing it. And the thing about it is, like, the people viscerally reacted to you because of how difficult of an opponent you were, you know, and that series, it was 4-1. That series was 4-1, but again, it was a lot closer than that. And in that particular moment, it was almost a showcase for where the Bulls were going as a team than it was like anything. And, you guys won 60 games the next year with the number 1 seed. Like, you guys were definitely on the rise. And so, yeah, I'm just like, I think it'll be a great episode. I'm so glad you're doing it. Obviously you could.
Any recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, I talked to Matt about it, but like, first off, Cleveland is a very ethnic city, you know? There's a lot of places in Cleveland that even generations after their families, you know, immigrated, that there's still very ethnic sides of it. And I think that's perfect for you. And also, I know that you're a man of culture. You've seen the world, you know, and I'm not, you know, when I compare Cleveland to, when I talk about Cleveland, like right now, so I've lived in Miami. I've lived in New York City. I'm obviously from the Cleveland area. I've been all over the world. I live in Omaha, right? So, you know, that's my perspective. When I talk about the art scene in Cleveland, I am not trying to say that it is going to rival Paris. You're not going to walk into Cleveland and say, oh, this is reminiscent of the Louvre. You're not going to walk into Cleveland and say, oh, this is neck and neck to MoMA in New York. But there are some places in Cleveland, the theater district and the arts district, you know, with the museums, that are not, you know. And the other thing about Cleveland is, like, there are some neighborhoods there that, at the, you know, Cleveland is past, you know, I hope I'm not grilled for this. Cleveland is probably not in its prime. It's past its prime, but there are some areas that were built in the prime where Cleveland was one of the best places in the country. And so you can go there and be like, look at this neighborhood. Like, this neighborhood is as beautiful as any neighborhood you will see in a winter city in a lot of places. So I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm not saying somebody won't as yell out of a car on the way by, but that's who you are. Like, that's, you didn't put the way you played basketball. You knew you were going to ruffle some feathers. You're going to upset some people. And so I think it's a perfect thing.
Yeah, it's going to, I'm excited. I'm excited to just spend some time with the people over there and hear their perspectives on Cleveland. And I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be, it's exciting. We're going in a couple weeks, and I'll come back with some stories.
All right. Well, thank you, Joakim, for spending some time with us. Yeah, I know you're always off on another adventure. I hope you have a great experience with Derrick on the jersey retirement. And
Thanks, man.
I got to say, like, the Serbia episode, like, people on my podcast have heard about my visit to Serbia. Joakim was there for the game and everything, but also literally cannot wait for that. And like, Cleveland is coming up. And if you want, and while you're waiting for that, you can go see him with the Derrick when he went to Chicago, and also when he was hanging out in Jamaica and in Morocco. This is a great project for you. Like, this is so much better than you sitting next to me analyzing, the first half of a game. Even though I would welcome you with me at ESPN at any time, this is so in your lane. So
Thanks, Brian.
This is really cool.
Appreciate you.
All right, we'll see you soon somewhere in the world.
Take it easy, man.
Man, I love that conversation with Joakim Noah, man. I'm so glad he did that. We had a great time in Belgrade. That episode, I think, is coming out soon. So we'll give you an update on when it is. And, he was kind of emotional talking about Derrick Rose there. Especially, I liked what he was talking about, how their team, even though they didn't win, they got blocked by those great LeBron teams, that team is still really connected. And that, connected more than some teams who won championships. So I thought that was cool. All right. Thanks again to Slater. Thanks again to Vince Goodwill. Thanks again to Mark Devon and Jackson, our producers. Thank you for watching and listening to the Hoop Collective this week. We'll be back next week.